Chapter 10. Politics. Sexism in American politics is rarely noted in the media. Unlike racism, blatant sexism in politics is permitted. It is also very difficult for American women to break into politics, whereas in many other countries even those Americans disparage as gender unequal women have risen to high political offices in far greater numbers than in the United States. The United States is behind in gender equality at every level of elected office. Social scientists have proposed 3 explanations for this. 1. Men are prejudiced against women and use stereotypes about women to suggest they are unfit for the duties of public office. Although more and more Americans report a willingness to consider voting for female candidates, prejudice against them still exists. 2. Women are socialized to be too reserved to enter into politics. 3. The high-pressure career of politics often precludes family life, requires networking opportunities that women do not typically have, and can only be entered with levels of funding that are hard for women to access. There is also a gender gap in the voting population of the United States. More women are registered Democrats, and more women vote for Democratic candidates. 2 common explanations for this gap are the following. 1. Women no longer feel obligated to vote the same way as their husbands do, and 2. Women are more liberal in their thinking than men. This gender gap has increased in past decades, perhaps because men have become more conservative. It should also be noted that white men and women are more conservative politically than black and Hispanic men and women. Just as women are assumed in sexist American ideology to be unfit in their femininity for the work of politics, so too are men judged by their masculinity in the political arena. Presidential elections are especially infused with the rhetoric of masculinity, rhetoric that focuses in particular on war. Political parties, too, fall prey to gendering impulses. The Democratic Party is considered feminine in its stress on social services and helping others, whereas the Republican Party is interpreted as masculine because of its advocacy of higher military spending and lesser social supports. The 2008 presidential election presented a change in gender dynamics. Many political issues have to do with gender, such as fertility and reproduction, parental leave and child care, and gender discrimination in the workplace. Transgendered people suffer particular gender discrimination, and gradually the political realm is offering some protections. The state is also gendered. It presumes the citizen to be male. In the global context, various masculine stereotypes operate to signal power or its lack, depending on one's political standing. Such gendered stereotyping has played into colonial racism in many cases, as well as structuring some resistance movements and conservative social agendas. Women have been fighting for gender equality in the political sphere since the mid-19th century. Although some women subscribe to the so-called third wave of feminism, many others reject the label of feminist at the same time as they take advantage of the gains feminism has achieved. Different branches of feminist theory and action hold far different political positions. Men have also supported feminist goals and beliefs, and there is a strong history of male allies to feminism. Chapter 11. The media. Media, like all other institutions, reflects the gender differences and inequalities in the society and helps to construct the differences and reproduce the inequalities. All of this is hidden behind the assumption that such differences are natural. Because media's primary goal is to entertain, it relies heavily on predefined gender differences to relay messages. As well, there are 2 media forms, his and her, and each sends distinctly different messages that help to maintain the inequality in society. As society has changed, so have viewing habits, with women watching more of men's media, which changes the message that needs to be told. Men, at the same time, are less likely to watch network television, moving to alternative forms of media that are all male, maintaining the segregation of men and women. As with television, print media also is divided into his and her forms, but overall the written word is considered feminine and not as often read by men, including both books and magazines. Magazines, considered the primary media at the forefront of women's issues, simultaneously project a traditional image of gender, include an unrealistic vision of beauty, and spur women to rebel against society and push societal boundaries, which is called polyvocality. Men's magazines, in contrast, are monovocal, focusing predominantly on sex and sexuality. Music is one of the most pronounced media that perpetuates gender differences, presenting misogynistic beliefs. Although rap is highlighted as one of the biggest perpetuators of negative depictions of women, most, if not all, genres produce the same traditional messages. Rap is most popular among middle-class white males, offering them access to black masculinity or tough culture that is largely encapsulated by class issues. Video games are predominantly played by boys, but that is contingent on the genre of the game. Within games, gender tends to be hyper-displayed through the characters in the game. Pornography is expanding and entering into more aspects of mainstream culture. We are also seeing an increase in women's consumption of porn. Still, most porn is produced from the male perspective, including males being desired and dominant. With all of the differences presented through the media, there are actually more similarities between men and women. Regardless, we continue to believe differences exist, such as the idea that women do not and cannot use the internet. Similarly, contrary to stereotypes, women enjoy watching sports as much as men, but not playing or watching fake sports, like in video games. What we do see is that as women enter into male bastions of media consumption, men retreat into smaller, all-male media enclaves in an attempt to continue to distinguish themselves from women, thus maintaining segregation and ultimately inequality. Chapter 12. Friendship and Love. Men and women have distinctly different experiences in relationships, both friendship and romantic, which are largely the result of social and historical events. Men's friendships, for example, had been historically closer and socially more important than romantic friendships and even, to some degree, expectations of women's friendships. In contemporary society, women's friendships, however, are identified as being better than men's because men's are limited in developing expressive intimacy as a result of masculinity. Often the differences between men and women are assumed and not as real as believed, including value in friendships. Differences do exist, but they could potentially be caused by other social factors, such as race, sexuality, and age, as well as social forces, such as industrialization, the rise of companionate marriages, the separation of spheres, and the convergence of the modern homosexual. This is partly caused by men's fear of engaging in self-disclosure with friends because of homophobic concerns, although men desire to share with male friends. Men do experience intimacy, but it is different than the expressive intimacy based on self-disclosure. It is called intimacy in the doing, which is based on shared activities. Regardless, expressive or feminine intimacy is attributed greater value than more masculine forms. Cross-sex heterosexual friendships present a different dynamic, one compounded by sex. The concerns of cross-sex friendships, much less same-sex friendships between men, are not shared by gays and lesbians because their friendships take on a different dynamic, one resembling family. This is not to claim gay men and lesbian friendships are the same because gay men are more likely to sexualize their friendships and tend to have more cross-sex friendships. Similar to friendship, love has changed over time, and, similar to issues in friendship, love is associated with women and is a primary component of marriage. The acceptability of marriage for love has only existed since the turn of the 20th century, and as love has become more readily accepted it has also become more tender and emotion-based. Although men and women actually display similar ideologies about love, their experiences differ, with women being more pragmatic about love and men having a more metaphysical perception of love. Still, more and more we see both men and women marry for love in the United States, although this is not so in other countries. Men and women display love differently, however, which becomes an issue in marriage because the structure of a couple's interaction changes when they marry. As a result, men's expressions of love are more difficult to perform, and because society links the other expressions of love with femininity, men are not likely to display them.